So the UFC is back again this weekend, but now we do unfortunately return to the Apex to what I think actually could be a very fun card, but just on paper I think that it is a pretty difficult card to pick. Talking about this card overall, I think it's going to be very fun. The fight poster does disappoint me just a little bit. I have been able to vouch for a lot of the posters recently. I thought that they've been really good. But this one, I swear it's just a copy and paste of a different poster that we saw somewhat recently. I can't pinpoint the event, but I swear, like, didn't Hill versus Dern have the exact same poster as this, or something similar along the lines with the blue, with the text vertical? I don't know. It's not really a great event, so I can't get too pressed about it. It's not like a pay-per-view or anything. To talk about the event that I had last weekend, of course, the National Disc Golf Championships here in New Zealand, you can actually watch it on YouTube. I think GoThrow is the channel that recorded it. I did compete in the event. I didn't do great. I mean, I didn't do as well as I hoped I would do, considering the fact that I was practicing for like the entire week before. But I think I played quite well. I beat a lot of really good players, so I'm not really too upset with my performance overall, if you wanted to know about that. Another thing as well that you don't want to know about, but I realized today that instead of buying the caramel Greek yogurt, I bought the honey Greek yogurt, and it's just nowhere near as good, so I'm quite upset about that, and I only realized that about 10 minutes before recording this video, so if I'm quite depressed, it's because of that. Now let's get into the card. This of course is not going to be the final order, but this is what Tapology's got it listed as right now. Gabriel Bonfim taking on Khaos Williams to start off the card. Bonfim, I think that this is going to be another pretty good comeback performance for him. Of course he did, unfortunately, take a very bad loss to Nicholas Dalby, where it just genuinely did look like he quit. But he got a quick win back. He got out there against Angelusa, went 3 rounds, proved he can go 3 rounds. Looked like a good prospect overall. And Angelusa's a good striker and wrestler. Angelusa can do it all. Now, is Lusa anywhere near as dangerous as Khaos Williams on the feet? I would say no. Khaos Williams does have that one-punch knockout power. We haven't really seen it super consistently recently, because of course he has been going the distance in a couple of his wins, but when he really first bounced onto the scene in the UFC, it was with big KOs early on. He went out there against Randy Brown, lost that fight, but I thought he could have won it because he did drop Randy Brown, and then is followed up with a pretty poor performance to Bedoya, where I thought that he did win, but Bedoya, not really the most technical guy, was able to land a lot of volume on him, which was kind of just an odd performance for Williams. But I think the difference in this matchup is, of course, Bonfim's a great boxer. I believe it's Gabriel Bonfim out of the two brothers that is a national professional boxing champion. He does hold a national Brazilian belt in professional boxing. It could be Ismael, but nonetheless, they both do have boxing backgrounds. And I think even despite the boxing, he can grapple, and he's proven that. Bonfim is going to be the better pure grappler in this matchup. He will unfortunately probably pull guard in this matchup, which could be interesting because Khaos Williams is a big, powerful guy. Does Khaos Williams even want to be on the ground with Bonfim? Probably not. But I think that Bonfim just has more ways to win. You know, I think he can land some pretty good shots on Khaos on the feet, but for the most part, it's going to come down to that grappling for me, which is why I pick Bonfim. Now we move on to Angela Hill taking on Ketlen Souza. Ketlen Souza come in on short notice, had a very tough short notice debut against the now ranked Karine Silva, and has now got off 2 pretty big wins. The most recent one, of course, being that first round submission over Yasmin Yaregi, a prospect who at this point just might not be a prospect anymore. You know, it kind of seems like Yaregi, maybe she does genuinely have like a chin issue, a defensive issue, or something along the lines of that, but Souza went out there, finished her in the first round. It was, of course, a big upset. Souza, despite standing at 5'3", is what I think is going to be the bigger fighter out of the two here against Angela Hill. Angela Hill, of course, we know what she does. She is a long, rangy striker with pretty good takedown defense that has been holding up even still recently, and she does just kind of keep being consistently decent, which is why Angela Hill has been in the UFC for so long, why she has so many fights. Her win-loss record isn't that great, but if you do just really look into it, for the most part, all of these fights have really happened in the UFC, and 12 wins, 14 losses. More losses than wins isn't good, but it is against the best level of competition, because Hill has been ranked for as long as I could even remember, to be honest with you. But I feel like in this matchup now, I feel like now that Hill just lost to Ricci, It's not a similar stylistic matchup because Souza is a lot less of a grappler than Ricci is, but Souza can present that grappling threat like we just saw, and she can strike too. Souza is going to be pressuring forward against Hill. Hill does typically let that happen, but I think that Souza, with her pressure, with her size, her strength, her well-roundedness, should be able to go out there and defeat Angela Hill. As a underdog, pretty low confidence pick on this one here. I think it is a close fight. Angela Hill still is a talented fighter. But now we can move up to a more confident pick in Rafael Estevam to defeat Jesus Aguilar. Jesus Aguilar kind of on a run right now in the promotion, on a bit of a win streak, of course, since he did go out there and lose to Teixeira a couple of years ago. I do love Jesus Aguilar. This guy is hilarious. He does stand at 5'4", but he wears those long shorts, so he looks even shorter than that. And he doesn't have very long arms. This guy's got a 62.5-inch reach. Not very long. And he just boxes, like he just kind of runs forward, doesn't really have the best defense, but he uses his little arms, and he runs forward, and he throws in the strikes, and he shoots for takedowns pretty regularly. But the way that he has won, maybe at this point is at most of his fights, if not, it's probably about half of his fights, is by guillotine. He got his most recent win by guillotine, but prior to the UFC, he had many guillotine choke wins, and that probably does kind of come due to that short arms that he does have, and a lot of strength in those little arms. Even had Tatsuro Taira in that guillotine in the first round, if you can recall that fight. Estevam, if he can make 125 pounds safely, I think he could be a very good fighter. This is a guy that's coming off a win over Charles Johnson. He did miss weight in that fight, but Charles Johnson is now, if he's not ranked, he's going to have a fight booked to be in the rankings soon. Charles Johnson, of course, a very active fighter. Estevam has shown that he can do it all. I think in the grappling, it could get interesting because Aguilar, we did see against Teixeira. Teixeira had to escape a guillotine in that situation, but then he just quickly turned it into the triangle, which he ended up winning the fight with. But Estevam's a good fighter. He's going to be a lot bigger than Jesus. He really just needs to try and make that weight because I don't know about him at 135 necessarily. The size advantage is going to be there. The reach advantage is going to be there. Estevam not really the best striker in the world, but I think that just being the much bigger guy is going to suit him on the feet, and he can grapple as well. I'm going to go with Estevam in this one here. Estevam is probably going to be shooting more takedowns as well. Now we have Valter Walker taking on Don'Tale Mayes. Now, tough fight to pick. I mean, in hindsight, I really do wish that I picked Lucas Bursky to beat Valter Walker all that time ago, because I just remembered watching tape on Valter Walker. I think it was this fight against Alex Nicholson. I'm pretty confident it was this one where he did win, because Nicholson, I think it was in the 4th round, did end up retiring or just ending the fight. But he was getting pieced up by Nicholson in there, and then he went out there and he beat my goat. The Taffa brothers, oh god, it's been tough. It's been tough. But yeah, just beat Junior Taffa, because the Taffa brothers just don't know how to grapple, or apparently just get knocked out in 30 seconds. Oh, when I pick them as underdogs. I don't even know, man, with the Taffa bros. Taffa gang for life, though, man. Once you're in, or you're in. But Valter Walker got nothing on the feet. Absolutely nothing on the feet. But he can wrestle pretty well, and he can grapple pretty well at heavyweight. Now, the thing about Don'Tale Mayes is he's just kind of a hilarious heavyweight. If you watch his fight against Hamdi Abdul-Wahab, he's striking against Hamdi Abdul-Wahab, but instead of just throwing basic strikes, which would get you pretty far at heavyweight, he's throwing spinning kicks, he's throwing jump kicks, he's throwing spinning. I swear at one point, I swear he was throwing spinning back fists as well. He was just doing it all, just jumping up and down, trying to just do the most when you don't need to do that. A lot of spinning back kicks in that fight, and Don'Tale Mayes, he just doesn't really... He's a pretty athletic guy for the weight class, but I don't think on the feet. I think the way that you beat Valter Walker on the feet is by being a pretty good boxer, just a pretty basic striker that can do it all, which is why, of course, I picked Junior Taffa to beat him, because Junior Taffa, former top 10 glory kickboxing heavyweight. Anyway, my disappointment is immeasurable. My day has already been ruined by the Manuka Honey Greek yogurt. I'm picking Valter Walker here. He shouldn't get knocked out by Don'Tale Mayes. Don'Tale Mayes just doesn't really knock people out all the time, and he should be able to get the takedowns. Let's see what Valter Walker does have in this fight. Speaking of takedowns, here we go. Vince Morales is taking on Elijah Smith. I'm picking the underdog here, and it looks like Vince Morales might be plus 200 right now, so this could be a pretty big underdog pick here, going against Elijah Smith. And don't get me wrong, I do like Elijah Smith quite a lot. I do remember actually watching one of his first fights as a professional live, because I was on Fury FC against Reyes Cortez. I believe this is the same day that the one championship fight was on, where Roberto Soldic lost to Sebastian Kurdistan. I believe this happened like 2 hours afterwards, something along those lines anyway. Anyway, I was watching this fight live, and I remember watching Elijah Smith, and I thought he looked pretty good. He did slow down, Cortez knocked him out, and now he's in the UFC, because of course he went on a pretty good win streak, and now is, he even beat Aaron Toe from New Zealand. But nonetheless, Elijah Smith. I consider Elijah Smith to be a pretty rangy striker. We did see a lot of takedowns in his fight against Aaron Toe, but I think that was more so just to kind of showcase the very well-rounded skill set that he does have, because he can wrestle and he can strike. But personally, I think that he's actually a better striker than wrestler. But we have seen a couple of things with Smith. We have seen him slow down in fights in the past. We do have just some questions about that cardio there. And I think another thing as well that you need to consider about Vince Morales is Morales, despite what the odds tell you, Morales just doesn't suck. He went out there on short notice against Taylor Lapilus. I thought he gave Taylor Lapilus a pretty decent test in that matchup, although Lapilus did very soundly defeat him, of course. But prior to that, he went on a good win streak. You know, he fought even for Ryzen. He went out there against former UFC fighter Hunter Azure, who was on the Ultimate Fighter before that. He beat one of the greatest of all time, Teruto Ishihara, Ultimate Fighter Japan legend, or maybe that was the original Road to UFC tournament that he won. But anyway, Teruto Ishihara, Elijah, Elijah Faber, legend, if you guys know what I mean, that promotion, I forgot that off the top of my head, but Vince Morales, the way that I think that Vince Morales can win this fight is by just doing what he does best, and that is coming forward, putting the pressure on, setting a very heavy pace. He's got great cardio for this weight class. He can go out there and afford to shoot 12 takedowns in 15 minutes. He can go out there and shoot takedowns over and over and over again. And if you force Smith to defend those takedowns, you're going to open up opportunities for yourself, and you're going to slow him down more than what Morales is going to get slowed down by, which is why I'm picking Vince Morales. That was a terrible breakdown. I'm picking Morales as a pretty big underdog here. I think I'm the only one from the We Want Picks crew doing it. Or maybe Jacob is. I think Jacob is. So yeah, shout out to Jacob. Now we move up to Julia Avila fighting against Cavalcanti. Avila hasn't fought for years. I mean, she fought against Miesha Tate. Lost in the wrestling in that matchup. And before that, she hadn't fought for years. Beat Stoliarenko, who somehow managed to have a career resurgence in this period of time. Who knows how that happened, but it did. And Jacqueline Cavalcanti, she's a striker. She's a very good striker. I feel like maybe they're just trying to build her in this matchup, giving her a 37-year-old Julia Avila, who just is a pressure-forward fighter, who doesn't really do much than that. She can wrestle, and she does have a black belt in BJJ. But Avila, I think she even averages less than a takedown in 15 minutes, so she doesn't get takedowns all that often. She doesn't shoot for them all that often. Cavalcanti should just be able to beat her up. I think that this is a good matchup for her. Women's bantamweight though, huh? Tough division to pick, but I think that this is a good matchup for Cavalcanti to kind of go up there and make a bit of a name for herself on the main prelim of this card. Rodolfo Viera now fights against Andre Petroski. My opinion on this one is that what Andre Petroski is best at, Rodolfo Viera is better at. And that is just kind of my basis of this prediction here. Rodolfo Viera, very good grappler, multiple-time world champion in BJJ. We do have a lot of questions about him. His takedown offense isn't very good. His cardio isn't very good. His striking, it's okay, but it's not that good. But Andre Petroski, I feel like you could nearly say the same thing. Now, Petroski does have not the best cardio, but he can push it for 3 rounds if he needs to, and he is a very big guy for 185 pounds. Andre Petroski's striking isn't great. I mean, the way that he strikes is he just throws hooks with as much power as he possibly can. I haven't really seen him strike in any other way than that. And it does work, I guess, if you're fighting against GM3. But aside from that, you know, Petroski's got a wrestling background. He's got grappling. I think the way that Petroski wins this fight, as weird as it sounds, is keeping it on the feet, but I just don't know if I can trust Petroski to not do that, because I think that Viera is going to get at least an opportunity to take the back or get the fight to the ground at some point. I'm picking Rodolfo Viera here. I don't feel very good about it. This isn't a confident pick at all, but I do think when it comes to grappling, I think Viera is the better grappler out of the two. And I think that even on the feet, despite Petroski, I think I would give him a slight advantage. Petroski is kind of just a hooks thrower. That's kind of all he does. Whereas Viera kind of strikes to set up takedowns, but not really. Viera's just a grappler. We all know this about him, but I think that he does go out there and get it done. Now, Edmen Shahbazyan fights against Dylan Budka. I guess this is actually a very unpopular pick, despite him being a minus 300 favourite. So I am picking Edmen Shahbazyan to win this one. But I know that Budka is a very popular underdog this week. It kind of just comes down to a couple of things for me. Dylan Budka, when he fought in the Contender Series, Dana White wanted him to fight at 170. He went to the PI. Maybe he went to the PI, or maybe that just never happened. They wanted him to go to the PI to make 170. That never happened. He couldn't make 170. Now he's at 185. And to be honest, I don't really see him being that small of a middleweight. Except now in this matchup against Edmen, where he is going to be giving up a height disadvantage to Edmen, who is 6'2", a very talented, rangy striker. For Budka, he's just a wrestler. I don't really think that he has much more than that in his arsenal. And I think that when you go out there and you watch matchups like him versus Cesar Almeida was able to defend a lot of those takedowns, and for the most part it was just Budka stalling up against the cage. And then against for Andre Petroski, and the same sort of thing kind of happened there. Petroski did match up some wrestling in that own one himself. But against Shahbazyan, yes, Shahbazyan, what is Shahbazyan terrible at? Cardio. He's got no cardio. Plus, he's got no takedown defense whatsoever. But what was his big comeback win? This is such a crazy... Oh, I can't believe I have to do this. His big comeback win was against Dolce Langwambola, an EFC champion, an EFC legend, who had a lot of mixed success in the promotion. And I think that this is a similar matchup to the Dolce Langwambola fight, because Dolce Langwambola, talented wrestler, I believe it was a judo background that he had, but still a talented wrestler nonetheless. And Shahbazyan went out there and beat him. I think he can do that to Budka. Oh, what am I even saying, man? Like, the thing is with Shahbazyan is his takedown defense is so bad and so non-existent. I'm questioning his ability to beat Dylan Budka, who just isn't really someone that I do rate all that highly. I do think that Shahbazyan goes out there and wins on the feet, though. Maybe he does get a knockout, but you just never know, because Shahbazyan, as I said, a gust of wind would blow him over and put him on his back. Jose Delgado now goes out there against Conor Matthews. I think that Jose Delgado wins this fight. He is a very tall, rangy guy for 145 pounds that can fight at range very well, but he can also fight in the pocket very well as well, which we did see in his fight against Ernie Suarez, which he fought on short notice on the Contender Series. Delgado is honestly a prospect that I'm pretty high on. He has looked very reckless on the regional scene, but coming into the Contender Series, I thought he was able to tone it down just a little bit. He looked quite good in that matchup, and he did showcase a very good skill set overall, which I was quite impressed by. And I was impressed enough by him to consider him to be a pretty good prospect to watch out for. Conor Matthews, on the other hand, fought, of course, on the Contender Series, got pieced up for 3 rounds by Francis Marshall. Francis Marshall, we have now learned, probably isn't UFC level himself. Went out there, fought a couple of guys. I mean, he fought Jair Farias, who hadn't fought for 4 years on the Contender Series. I did pick Farias in that fight, like an idiot, but, I mean, what can you do when someone hasn't fought for years? And then he went out there and he lost, of course, to Bazooka by knockout. I think Delgado does the same. Delgado is a very talented prospect that I'm looking forward to seeing. Matthews, he's never really been super that impressive to me. He's got a lot of submission wins, but a lot of them come to guys with losing records. I remember when we looked into the Francis Marshall fight, of course, it was a battle of the guys that had just beaten absolutely nobody, because Francis Marshall had arguably beaten worse competition. But I think Delgado goes out there. Delgado's proven he just beat Suarez, who's a pretty decent guy himself, and before that had a couple of good wins too. I think that Delgado goes out there, and I think he does get the knockout as well. He's a good fighter. Ismael Bonfim, he's looking for another comeback, just like his brother when he lost to Benoit Saint-Denis and really skyrocketed Benoit Saint-Denis up there into the rankings, of course, and then since then Benoit has lost to a couple of the top contenders. Bonfim, I think he wins. Bonfim's a guy I'm high on, man. You know, I was one of the only people that was picking him to defeat Nariman Abasov in the Contender Series in 2022, when he was a very slight favourite, I think, in that matchup, but everyone was on Abasov because Abasov was 28-3 and had beaten some top guys. But Anyway, Bonfim showcased the boxing in that fight. Very good boxer, amateur, professional boxing background, just like his brother. And then he went out there and he just embarrassed McKinney. He showed that McKinney just does not have any striking technique at all. You watch that fight, McKinney is off balance all the time. He even jumped to throw hooks at some points. Bonfim was just running circles around him and eventually put him out brutally in the second round. And then he goes out there against BSD, abandoned literally everything that he's good at. He just asked BSD to kick him in the body. What was he doing? The most upsetting, frustrating performance I've ever seen in my entire life. I'm still upset about it, but then he beat the old man Vince Pichel. Nadim Sadykhov, he's on a win streak himself. He's on a draw to Vyacheslav Borchev, which doesn't look that good now that Tom Nolan just went out there and beat him. And when he fought Evan Elder was arguably beating him before that stoppage to the cut. Terence McKinney was finding some success against Sadykhov in that matchup. And McKinney, we saw Bonfim. This is MMA math. I don't like doing MMA math. But I think that Bonfim in this matchup against Sadykhov is a very talented striker. He's got great kickboxing and decent wrestling. But I do just think that this is a similar matchup, despite, of course, them both being from Azerbaijan, to Bonfim versus Abasov, where I think that Sadykhov just doesn't have the same options on the feet that Bonfim does. I think Bonfim is faster. I think he's the more slick striker out of the two. And I do think that Ismael Bonfim can go out there and just kind of beat Sadykhov in the striking over 3 rounds. Now, you do have to worry about... I don't even think this is fight IQ. I think this is just pure, maybe lack of intelligence in general that he did show against BSD. Maybe he's just going to beg Sadykhov to kick him in the head, and then all of a sudden Sadykhov does kick him in the head, and he gets knocked out. I can't predict that to happen, but from what I do know, I think Bonfim's the better striker out of the two, and he should win using that boxing. But if he goes around begging Sadykhov to knock him out, then I just don't know anymore. Calvin Kattar now has to defend his spot in the rankings to Youssef Zalal. At this point, it's pretty sad for Kattar. He got really badly injured, of course, in his big shot against Arnold Allen, where despite losing to Josh Emmett by split decision, he should have won that fight. This could have put him in title conversations, and he injured himself by jumping forwards and then throwing a kick, but then landing sideways. It was a really awkward landing, really awkward injury there. Kind of sad because he was looking pretty good in the fight in the round before that actually ended up happening, but sad to see. Went out there against Aljo, the worst fight in UFC 300. By far, wasn't even close. Probably arguably the only bad fight on UFC 300, but not really Kattar's fault. It was Aljo who just decided to wrestle the whole time. But what does that open up? An opportunity for Zalal to do the same thing. Youssef Zalal is showing that he's a very talented guy. This guy's coming off a massive win streak where, of course, he was released from the promotion, went on a win streak for quite a few different promotions. Well, mostly the Sparta promotion where he fought in boxing, kickboxing, and MMA all in the same night, which is just insane, to be honest, to then coming in on short notice and beating Billy Quarantillo, which is massive, and then he just went out there and beat Jack Shaw, which is massive, and Jack Shaw, I think, just retired. So he retired Jack Shaw, but to be fair, Jack Shaw's career ended the moment he chose to fight at 145 pounds. Literally everyone predicted that was going to happen, and then it happened. But against Calvin Kattar, I think that he can do, or is it Kattar? Calvin Kattar, I'm sorry, but against Calvin Kattar, I think Zalal can do kind of just the same sort of thing that Aljo did to him, except actually be a little bit more aggressive on the feet. Despite Kattar being I'm saying a different name every time now, but despite Kattar being a talented boxer, I think Zalal, just forward pressure, can strike pretty well. Arguably not as good at pure striking than Kattar is, but I don't think it's really going to come down to that. I think Zalal's going to go out there, he's going to shoot for the takedowns. Kattar coming off that injury is going to make things awkward still in the wrestling. We just saw him get out wrestled pretty easily by Aljo. Now, am I saying that Zalal is as good as Aljamain Sterling? Not necessarily, but do I think that Zalal goes out there and does the same thing? Yes. I think that Zalal can go out there and wrestle, find mixed success kind of just everywhere when it does come down to it. Now we move up to the main event. I'm not as confident in this as others. I'm seeing a lot of people picking Jared Cannonier in the We Want Picks Discord, which you should join. It's free to join. But I think it's 8,000 people in there. It's kind of insane. A lot of people are on Cannonier. I'm not. I just don't trust Cannonier anymore. He's nearly 41 years old at this point, and the most recent performances that we have seen of him, he hasn't really shown the aggressiveness that I would like to see out of him. And as for Gregory Rodrigues, he's looking good. You know, he did beat one of my favorite fighters of all time, the GOAT, arguably the GOAT, Denis Tiuliulin. Should have been a no contest. Or it should have been a DQ, actually. Denis should have won that fight. But anyway, hey, we move on. Back of the headshots are legal, apparently. He knocked out Brad Tavares. People don't really do that to Tavares. Tavares has kind of notoriously had a pretty good chin up until recently when Robocop knocked him out. And then, of course, he beat CLD. And CLD is going to be a tricky matchup for everyone with his very odd striking style. But I do have a genuine concern. I worry that this fight is going to be the Bruno Ferreira fight 2.0, because I picked Bruno Ferreira in that matchup as a pretty big underdog to defeat Robocop when Bruno got signed. No, he signed off the Contender Series, but that was a short notice debut. And Cannonier and Bruno Ferreira do share a lot of similarities. They're both very powerful guys that do have a lot of power. I guess that's where I was going. They're both very powerful guys that move forward, they throw hooks. Most of their power does come from in the pocket. And Cannonier can knock someone out in one shot, like Bruno Ferreira did showcase against Gregory Rodrigues. But the thing about Jared Cannonier is just recently we haven't seen it. We haven't seen the aggressiveness. Even when he fought against Israel Adesanya, he just wasn't aggressive. He didn't come forward. Well, he did. He was pressuring, but he didn't do anything with that pressure. He beat Sean Strickland. I guess maybe I'm like one of the few people on the planet that thought that he did beat Strickland, but kind of same sort of thing. It was a low volume affair, wasn't that good. The Tory fight was fun. That did get fight of the night, of course, and even did the Caio Borralho fight. But for the most part, from what I'm seeing from Jared Cannonier, it's just not the same aggressiveness that I need to see to pick him to win. Because I feel like the way that Cannonier wins this fight is by knocking out Gregory Rodrigues. And I just don't know if he does. I just don't know if Cannonier does go out there with the aggressiveness that we have seen in the past and just tries to knock out Rodrigues. Now, it is worth noting, though, with that Vettori fight, that he did have a couple massive rounds where he was just beating up Vettori, but Vettori's iron chin kind of just saved him in that matchup. Rodrigues doesn't have an iron chin, but what Rodrigues does have, which I really wouldn't mind seeing, is that wrestling background. A national champion in wrestling from Brazil. We just saw it kind of get shown by Rayoni Barcelos when he just defeated Peyton Talbot. Maybe we see some wrestling in this matchup from Rodrigues. I'm picking Rodrigues. I'm not that confident in it, though. I know there's a lot of people out there picking Cannonier with confidence. There's a lot of people picking Rodrigues with confidence. I'm just not confident at all in Rodrigues, but I am picking him to win. Let me know what you think about this fight, about this card in the comments below. Alufay 202 is coming up next weekend. That will be my next article on the We Want Picks website. I haven't done an article recently because it's just all a mess. It's just all a mess. I'll be honest, just kind of what's going on with me right now. But I'll be back into it next week. I'll see you guys in the next one.